Jasper Thorne woke screaming at 0300 hours for the 7th night in a row. His cargo hauler, the drifting Promise, hummed around him in the silence of deep space. Her engines a steady heartbeat that usually lulled him into dreamless sleep. Not anymore. Not since he had passed through the Veil Nebula 3 weeks ago, a swirling mass of violet and silver mist that stretched across half a light-year of empty space. Nobody truly knew what the nebula was. A cosmic accident, a stellar nursery gone wrong, or perhaps the remnants of something ancient that had died there. Star charts marked it as safe passage. Radiation levels were negligible. Ships crossed through it every day. But something had touched Jasper in that mist, something that refused to let him go. He sat up in his bunk, sweat cooling on his skin, heart hammering against his ribs. The dream was always the same. A woman stepped out of silver fog, her features obscured, but achingly familiar. She reached for him with both hands, her lips moving in words he could not hear. And behind her, reality itself, fractured stars bleeding into one another. Time folding backward and forward, galaxies spinning like prayer wheels in the dark. The worst part wasn't the cosmic horror of it all. It was the longing that seized him when he saw her, a grief so profound it felt like he'd lost her 1,000 times before. Jasper ran a hand through his dark hair, now streaked with premature silver at the temples. 34. Too young for gray hair. Too old for fairy tales about destiny and cosmic romance. He'd spent the last decade hauling freight across the outer rim, medical supplies to colony worlds, mining equipment to asteroid stations, even a shipment of live honeybees to a terraforming project on Kepler-4 for to be. It was honest, lonely work, the kind that suited a man who'd learned not to put down roots. His parents had died when their atmospheric processor failed on Mars. His sister had married an inter-system banker and stopped returning his calls years ago. Jasper had a few friends scattered across ports, drinking buddies mostly, people whose names he sometimes forgot between visits. He liked it that way. No attachments meant no pain when things inevitably fell apart. So why did this dream woman feel like the only real thing in his entire life? He pulled on his flight suit and made his way to the cockpit. The drifting Promise was 3 days from Titan Station, where he'd unload 60 tons of industrial fabricators for the Habitat expansion cruise. After that, he'd pick up whatever paid well and didn't ask questions, same as always. The view screen showed the endless black, stars scattered like salt across velvet. Jasper settled into his pilot's chair and called up his navigation logs, scrolling back to his passage through the Veil Nebula. He'd recorded everything: sensor readings, visual logs, radiation levels. Nothing unusual, nothing that explained the dreams. Ship's log, day 83, he said aloud, activating the recorder. Still experiencing the dreams, still no rational explanation. Beginning to wonder if I picked up some kind of neurological contamination in the nebula. Should probably see a medtech at Titan Station, but he trailed off. But he didn't want them to take the dreams away. That was insane. The dreams were torture, except they weren't, not entirely. Buried within the fear was something else: recognition, memory. He pulled up the galactic news feeds: trade disputes, colony expansions, political scandals, pirate reports. Nothing about phenomena in the Veil Nebula. No mention of other pilots seeing dreams. He was alone in this. Then something caught his eye, buried in the science section. Archaeological team uncovers pre-human artifact on abandoned world of Threshold Prime. Lead researcher claims discovery could rewrite the understanding of intelligent life in the galaxy. Something in his chest tightened. Jasper opened the article. Sparse details. A private expedition, funded by some obscure research foundation. The artifact, a crystalline pillar of unknown composition, covered in undecipherable symbols. The single image showed a structure that looked like frozen starlight. Veins of dark matter running through it. And standing beside it, one hand pressed to its surface, was a woman. The image was blurry, her face half turned away, but Jasper felt the air leave his lungs. He knew her. Not her name or history, but her presence. He knew the way she stood, the curve of her spine, the tilt of her head. He knew her the way he knew his own reflection. Hands trembling, he zoomed in. The caption listed the researchers, Dr. Naya Soulweaver and team. The name meant nothing, yet everything. He pulled up public records and independent archaeologist, 31, no permanent address. Specialized in pre-contact civilizations. Born aboard a colony ship, the New Horizon. During its 20-year voyage to Tau Ceti, she worked alone, taking private contracts from foundations and collectors obsessed with ancient mysteries. She was, like him, a wanderer, someone who belonged nowhere and everywhere at once. Jasper sat back, mind racing. This was madness. He was about to abandon his cargo run, his livelihood, to fly across half the sector chasing a ghost from a dream, because he'd seen a woman in a photograph and felt something impossible. But even as logic screamed no, his hands moved across the console, plotting a new course. The drifting promise could reach threshold prime in 11 days if he pushed the engines hard. He'd take a financial hit for breaching his contract, but he could afford it. Ship's log. Supplemental, he whispered. I'm changing course to threshold prime. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm looking for. But if I don't do this, I think I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what I missed. He engaged the new coordinates. The ship turned toward an unseen star that burned bright in his mind. Outside, the cosmos shifted. Inside, Jasper Thorne felt something he hadn't in years: hope, terror, and the absolute certainty that his life was about to change forever. And in the quiet hum of the ship, the woman's voice came again, faint but clear through the endless dark. Find me, she whispered, before it's too late. Naya Soulweaver had stopped believing in coincidences the moment she touched the pillar. That had been 6 days ago, in the ruins of what her team had nicknamed the Temple of Echoes on Threshold Prime. 6 days since her world had fractured into before and after. 6 days since she'd started remembering things that had never happened. Now she sat in her small research tent, surrounded by holographic projections of the artifact's surface patterns. Her hands wrapped around a cup of cold synthetic coffee she'd forgotten to drink. Outside, the wind howled across the dead planet's surface, carrying dust that had lain undisturbed for millennia, until her expedition had arrived to stir it again. Threshold Prime was a graveyard. Once, perhaps 50,000 years ago, it had been home to something, a civilization that had built cities of crystalline towers and carved symbols into the bedrock that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. Now it was just rust-colored desert and the ghosts of whatever had lived here. The atmosphere was thin but breathable, the temperature tolerable by day and deadly by night. It was the perfect place to lose yourself in work and forget that you were painfully, crushingly alone. That was why Naya had come here, to be alone with the dead, who never disappointed you or left you behind. But the pillar had changed everything. She replayed the recording of her first contact, watching herself in the hologram as she approached the artifact. In the video, she looked small and uncertain, her protective suit dusty, her dark hair pulled back in a practical braid. The pillar towered over her, 3 meters tall and half a meter wide. Its surface like frozen starlight shot through with veins of something that looked like solidified shadow. The symbols covering it seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Video Naya reached out tentatively, her gloved hand hovering centimeters from the surface. Then she touched it. The recording showed what happened next from the external camera's perspective: nothing. She stood there, hand pressed to the pillar, for 47 seconds. Then she stumbled backward, falling to her knees as her team rushed forward to help. But Naya remembered what the camera couldn't capture: the moment her skin made contact with the crystalline surface. Reality peeled away like old paint. She'd fallen through layers of existence through time that moved in spirals. Instead of lines through lives she'd never lived, but somehow remembered with perfect clarity. She'd seen herself as a child, on a world of eternal twilight, learning to weave light into patterns that could reshape matter. She'd seen herself as a warrior aboard a ship that sailed between stars using only will and mathematics. She'd seen herself die 1,000 different deaths across 1,000 different lifetimes, and in every single one, she'd seen him, a man with dark hair turning silver, with eyes the color of deep space, with hands that knew how to hold her like she was something precious and breakable, a man whose name changed with each lifetime, but whose soul remained constant, a man who was hers, in ways that transcended physics and reason. A man she'd never met in this life. A man who, by all logic, couldn't possibly exist. Naya stood abruptly, pacing the confines of her tent. This was madness. She was a scientist trained in archaeological analysis, carbon dating, and rigorous hypothesis testing. She didn't believe in past lives, soulmates, or cosmic destiny. She believed in evidence, data, and peer-reviewed research. But the visions had the weight of memory, not fantasy. They felt more real than half the actual memories of her childhood, which had been spent aboard the New Horizon, watching stars slide past at subliminal speeds, never belonging anywhere, always in transit between one place and another. Her tablet chimed with an incoming message. Naya grabbed it, grateful for the distraction, then frowned at the sender, Marcus Webb, her funding director at the Foundation for Pre-Contact Studies. Marcus rarely contacted her directly unless something was wrong. Naya, his recorded message began, his weathered face creased with concern. "I'm pulling your team out. We've had some unusual inquiries about your discovery. People who shouldn't know about it yet. I don't like it. Pack up everything, especially the data cores with the pillar scans. Transport ship arrives in 4 days. Stay safe." The message ended. Naya replayed it, her unease growing. Marcus was former military intelligence paranoid by nature and training. If he was worried enough to abort the expedition early, something serious was happening. She pulled up her communication logs, checking for unusual access attempts. There are 3 separate queries to her public research profile in the past week, all from anonymized sources. Someone was looking for her, someone who knew how to cover their tracks. Naya's hands moved automatically, encrypting her research files and backing them up to multiple secure locations. Whatever the pillar was, whatever it meant, she couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands. The visions had shown her enough to know that the artifact was important in ways she didn't yet understand. That night, she dreamed not the confused fragments she usually experienced, but something vivid and immediate. She stood in a garden that grew among the stars, plants made of light and shadow intertwining in impossible geometries. And across that garden, she saw him. He was younger than in some of her visions, older than in others. He wore the practical flight suit of a cargo pilot, his dark hair disheveled, his eyes wide with wonder and recognition. He looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. "I know you," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I don't know how, but I know you." Naya felt tears on her cheeks. "I've been waiting," she heard herself say, "for so long. Across so many lives." He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. When his hands cupped her face, she felt the shock of connection, like electricity through her bones. This was right. This was real in a way nothing else had ever been. "We don't have much time," he said urgently. "Something's coming, something that wants to keep us apart." "Then we fight it," Naya said fiercely. "We've fought before. I remember now. We've always fought, and we've always lost." His thumb traced her cheekbone, and she leaned into the touch like a flower turning toward the sun. "Every lifetime, we find each other, and every lifetime, we're torn apart before we can finish what we started." "What did we start?" But before he could answer, the garden began to dissolve. The stars dimmed, his face blurred and fragmented. "Find me," he called out as the dream collapsed. "Find me in the real world. We have to break the cycle this time. We have to." Naya woke gasping, her tense environmental controls humming in the pre-dawn darkness. She grabbed her tablet with shaking hands and pulled up the galactic shipping registers, scrolling through current positions of cargo vessels. Within 100 light-years of Threshold Prime, she didn't know what she was looking for until she found it. The drifting promise, registered to a Jasper Thorn, currently en route to Titan Station. But no. The navigation logs showed a recent course correction. The ship had changed heading 6 days ago. 6 days ago, the same day she'd touched the pillar. Naya's fingers flew across the screen, calculating trajectories and arrival times. If the drifting promise maintained its current course and speed, it would reach Threshold Prime in approximately 5 days. 1 day after Marcus's transport ship was scheduled to extract her team. No. She whispered into the empty tent. She'd waited lifetimes for this. She wasn't going to miss him by a single day because of evacuation protocols. She began composing a message to Marcus, carefully worded to sound rational and professional, requesting delay of extraction by 3 days. Critical analysis of artifact ongoing. Results could be a breakthrough in understanding pre-contact civilizations. All true. Technically, even if her real motivation was something she could never put in an official report. Then she pulled up everything she could find about Jasper Thorne. There wasn't much. 34 years old. Born on Mars. Parents deceased. One estranged sister. No criminal record. Solid reputation among the freight haulers. A loner who kept to himself and always delivered on time, until 6 days ago, when he'd abandoned the lucrative contract to fly to the edge of explored space for no apparent reason. Naya's heart hammered in her chest. It was him. It had to be him, the man from her visions, from her impossible memories, from lifetimes of love and loss and unfinished promises. She spent the next hour composing and deleting messages to his ship. Everything sounded insane. Hello, I think we're cosmically bound soulmates. I've been dreaming about you, and I'm pretty sure we've died together in 1,000 previous incarnations. Please don't think I'm crazy, but an ancient artifact told me you're my destiny, in the end. She settled for something simple. Jasper Thorne, this is Naya Soulweaver on Threshold Prime. I believe you're experiencing unusual dreams or visions. I have been too. I think I know why. Please respond when you receive this. She sent it before she could second-guess herself, then sat back and waited, her entire body thrumming with nervous energy. The response came 2 hours later, just 3 words, I'm on my way. Naya closed her eyes and felt something inside her chest unlock a door she hadn't known was closed, swinging open to let in light, an air and possibility. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness of space, he was coming toward her. The man she'd loved and lost across lifetimes beyond counting. The man whose soul was bound to hers by threads older than time itself. Outside her tent, Maiko Tanaka hadn't expected her Tuesday morning to include witnessing what might be either true love or a shared psychotic break, but here she was. She stood in the observation lounge of Threshold Station, the small orbital platform that served as the supply hub for the archaeological expedition. Below, watching the people meet for the first time while acting like they'd known each other for eternity. It was beautiful and deeply unsettling in equal measure. The cargo pilot, Jasper Thorne, had docked his ship 40 minutes ago. He'd barely completed the standard safety protocols before practically running toward the shuttle bay where Naya Soulweaver had just arrived. From the planet's surface, Maiko had been there to deliver the fresh herbs she'd cultivated in her hydroponics bay. The expedition team had requested basil and mint to break the monotony of synthetic rations. When the two had spotted each other across the crowded bay, they'd both frozen, just stopped moving entirely, as if someone had pressed pause on their personal timelines. Then Naya had dropped the equipment case she'd been carrying. It hit the deck plating with a crash that made everyone in the bay turn to look. Nobody noticed. Neither of them seemed to notice anything except each other. Jasper had crossed the distance between them in a dozen long strides, and Naya had met him halfway, and when they came together, it was like watching the celestial bodies finally complete in orbit that had been degrading for millennia. They hadn't kissed. They just stood there, foreheads pressed together, hands clasped, breathing like they'd both been drowning and had just broken the surface. Tears streamed down both their faces. I know you, Jasper had whispered, his voice carrying in the sudden silence of the bay. I've always known you, Naya had answered. That had been 10 minutes ago. Now they sat in the observation lounge, still holding hands, still staring at each other like they were afraid the other might disappear if they looked away. Maiko had followed them partly out of concern, partly out of curiosity, and partly because she'd spent the last 3 months alone on this station tending her plants and talking to herself. Anything interesting was a welcome change. So, Maiko said, settling into a chair across from them with her thermos of green tea, you do want to explain what just happened? Or should I assume you're both having the same very specific mental breakdown? Jasper turned to look at her for the first time, seeming to notice her existence. He had interesting eyes, Maiko thought, dark and haunted, but with a spark of something fierce underneath. You wouldn't believe us if we told you, he said. Try me. I'm a botanist who chose to spend 6 months on an isolated orbital platform, growing tomatoes for archaeologists. My bar for believable is pretty flexible." Naya laughed, a sound that was half joy and half hysteria. She still hadn't let go of Jasper's hand. "We've lived before, multiple times, together, and we keep finding each other, and we keep," her voice broke. "We keep being torn apart," Jasper finished quietly. "Every single time. Something stops us. Something keeps us from." He trailed off, looking lost. "From completing whatever we started," Naya said. "Long before history began. Before humanity even existed." Maiko sipped her tea and studied them both. She'd spent enough time alone to recognize when people were telling their truth, even if that truth sounded impossible. "The artifact you found, the pillar, that's what triggered this?" "Yes," Naya said. "I touched it, and I remembered. Everything, every life we've lived, every time we've met, every time we've—" She stopped, swallowing hard. "Every time we've died," Jasper said bluntly. "Because we always die. Together or apart, it doesn't matter. We never get to finish what we're supposed to do." Michael leaned forward. "And what are you supposed to do?" They looked at each other, then back at her. "We don't know," they said in unison. The synchronicity sent a shiver down Maiko's spine. She'd always been sensitive to patterns, to the hidden connections between things. It was what made her good at her work, understanding the subtle relationships between soil chemistry and plant growth, between light wavelengths and photosynthesis. But this was a pattern on a scale she couldn't begin to comprehend. "Okay," she said slowly. "So you have cosmic amnesia about your cosmic purpose. That's not great. What do you do know?" Jasper released Naya's hand reluctantly. Maiko noticed and ran both hands through his silver-streaked hair. "I know I've been dreaming about her for weeks, since I passed through the Veil Nebula. I know that when I saw her picture in a news feed, I changed course and abandoned a lucrative cargo contract to fly to the literal edge of explored space. And I know that when I touched the pillar, I saw him," Naya added, "in 100 different lifetimes, different names, different faces, but always him, always us. And I know something is trying to keep us apart, something powerful, old, and patient." "Patient enough to wait through multiple lifetimes?" Maiko asked. "Patient enough to range multiple lifetimes," Naya said. "I think, and this sounds insane, but I think we're caught in some kind of cycle, a loop of reincarnation that keeps resetting before we can break free." Maiko set down her tea, her mind racing. She'd studied cycles all her life, the cycles of seasons, of growth and decay, of life and death and rebirth in her gardens. But this was something else entirely. "The Veil Nebula," she said suddenly. "That's where you started having the dreams." Jasper nodded. "The moment my ship passed through it." "Why?" "Because Threshold Prime is on the opposite side of known space from the Veil Nebula," Maiko said, pulling up a star chart on her tablet. "You'd awaken to these memories at the exact same moment, but you were separated by nearly 100 light years." She traced the positions on the map, her finger moving between the 2 points. "And right here, almost exactly halfway between them, is Threshold Station," Naya breathed. "Where we just met." Maiko nodded slowly, a pattern emerging that she didn't fully understand but could feel in her bones. 3 points, 2 awakening sites and 1 convergence point. "That's not random. Nothing about this is random," Jasper said grimly. "I abandoned my route to come here. Naya, you delayed your evacuation. We were pushed, no, pulled to this exact location at this exact time. By what?" Maiko asked. "By whoever set up the cycle in the first place," Naya said. She stood abruptly, pacing to the observation window. Below them, Threshold Prime turned slowly, its rust-colored surface marked with the geometric shadows of ancient ruins. "The pillar wasn't just showing me the past. It was waking me up, preparing me. For what?" Jasper joined her at the window, and Maiko watched as their hands found each other again. "Drawn together like magnets, for choosing," Naya said softly. "That's what we never got to do before. We were always interrupted, always stopped before we could make the choice." "What choice?" Maiko asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. Naya turned to face them both, tears streaming down her face again. "To love each other freely, or to fulfill the purpose we were created for. We can't have both. That's the trap." That's why the cycle keeps resetting, because we keep trying to have both, and reality itself won't allow it. Jasper's face went pale. How do you know that? Because I've just started remembering the moments before each death, Naya whispered. And every single time, one of us is reaching for the other while trying to complete the task. Every single time, we're torn between love and duty. And every single time, the universe makes us choose by killing us before we can. The observation lounge fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support and the distant whisper of solar wind against the hull. Maiko felt like she was standing at the edge of something vast and terrible, a cosmic machinery that had been running for eons and had just revealed one tiny gear. What was the task? Jasper asked hoarsely. What were we supposed to do? I don't remember yet, Naya admitted, but I think the pillar knows. I think that's why it called to me, why it woke us both up across all that distance. Something has changed. Some variable in the equation is different this time. Maiko looked between them. These two people who had found each other across impossible odds and were now facing an impossible choice. Her botanical mind seized on an analogy. Sometimes, to save a plant, you had to let it die back to the roots. Sometimes, growth required sacrifice. Maybe the variable is that you know now, she said quietly. Every other lifetime, you were blind to the trap until it sprung. This time, you see it coming. Jasper turned to her, hope and fear warring in his expression. So we can avoid it? Maybe, Maiko said. Or maybe seeing it coming is part of the trap, Naya laughed bitterly. You're surprisingly dark for a botanist. I work with death every day, Maiko said with a shrug. Compost, decomposition, the whole cycle. Nothing grows without something else dying first. She stood, moving to join them at the window. But here's what I know. Plants are stubborn. They'll crack through concrete to reach sunlight. They'll survive fires, floods, freezes. They'll find a way, even when everything is against them. She placed a hand on each of their shoulders, feeling the tension in their muscles, the weight of lifetimes of loss. Maybe you two are like that. Maybe you've been cracking through concrete for eons, getting a little farther each time. Maybe this is the lifetime you finally break through. Or maybe this is the lifetime we give up. Jasper said softly, maybe we choose the task over each other and finally break the cycle. Is that what you want? Maiko asked. He looked at Naya.